Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Dinner and a Game. My name is Ray. I am part of Dinner and a Game, and tonight, so are these lovely gentlemen. Hi guys, how y'all doing tonight?
Not too bad, not too
How's it
shabby.
going?
Excellent. Now, tonight is a show we call Dinner Conversations because our actual game table got started out as, us, everyone coming over to our house on a Saturday night and basically joining up to play some games, and we happened to cook every single time. So we just started calling it Dinner and a Game. And when we decided we were going to do a podcast or a streaming show, I was trying to figure out what to call it, and my wife just said, just call it what we've always called it, Dinner and a Game. So, all that being said, every single game, whenever everyone got to the house, the first thing that happened for the first hour is we just sat around and chatted. Just talked about the week, talked about the day, and talked about different stuff that caught our interest. So I figured, since I'm meeting a lot of people in the gaming community who have a lot of different opinions about things, I thought we would bring these topics up in this type of forum, and we would let the audience also participate via chat. So that's basically the format for the show. If you guys want to weigh in on anything we're talking about, just say so in chat. If the other gentlemen don't have the Twitch up, I will repeat the questions live, and we will try and discuss them. And tonight we are having a topic that is kind of concurrent with a lot of stuff that's happening right now in the gaming industry, because we've moved a lot from the traditional tabletop gaming setup to a more digital format. And so one of the big things that's come up with the digital format is the subjects of etiquette at the table. One of the things you don't do is you don't go bleh. But no, and that is true for a lot of people, that it's the first time that they're coming to the table, first time they're playing an RPG, and there's a lot of misconceptions of what that is and what that means, which can lead to a lot of uncomfortable situations at a gaming table. And we're going to just go over some of these subjects and items, and we're going to go over both how to prevent them, which is usually fairly obvious, and we're going to go over how to resolve situations when they occur, and we're going to go over what we all think and consider to be proper etiquette for the gaming tables and for the digital sphere. So, first off, let me tell you who we have on the show tonight. Number one, we have Michael. Michael is a TikToker and a Twitch streamer, and he actually has a fairly lively conversations on his TikTok regarding a lot of different subjects in the gaming sphere. Michael, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Improv GM at Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok, as well as Michael Matthews Jr., which is my original one, but that went viral, so I don't use it as much because it's all screwed up with its views.
It's all screwed up and fused. Oh, there's an echo. Oh, sorry. Chris's mic. I got it.
But a lot of my older RPG stuff is still on there.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, it is. It is. I'm still going through your backlog, your catalog there, Michael speaks to a lot of other people who are also in the industry. Does a lot of what they call stitches and question answering. So if people have questions on voice questions on their TikTok, Michael is a very good voice to listen to. He's got lots of experience, and he's able to put things in a way that helps people really understand it. And I think that actually comes from your theater background, because you learned how to basically communicate in very plain and direct manner to get these ideas across.
I'm also a high school theater and English teacher. So between those things and doing improv, a lot of what we started off with was improv and role-playing, and where those two meet.
Gotcha. Exactly. And we also have Chris on tonight. Chris is the power behind the throne for UST. UST is Unusually Serious Turn, and it is another Twitch stream that we have partnered with to create content. Chris is going to be on our Twitch stream of a RPG that I am really coming to love called City of Mists. It is a Powered by the Apocalypse themed RPG, and it is set in a fictionalized major city, and it is basically the accounting of what happens if the gods are born into a human vessel and then those powers awaken in them, but they still have to make rent.
Yeah.
So, so it's going to be a very interesting time. Chris, where can people find you on the interwebs?
The easiest places to find me are at the twitch.tv/UST show, UST show at gmail.com for our basic email, and UST show on Instagram and Twitter.
Yep. And if you want to check out any of those links, I did post that up in our chat, and you can follow them on Twitch. And remember, both from Michael and for Chris and for anyone else who streams, every single follow is like a precious thing to us. And if you guys can, do follow all the creators you can, because every single step on that follow list gets them closer to getting to goals that help them out as streamers. So if you can, give them a follow. If you can't, everyone is busy, so we all understand. So we're going to get down to the brass tacks here. One of the big things that happens a lot in the gaming scene is new players joining the table. Well, I should say now is new players joining tables. Thanks to D&D 5e, we have had pretty much an explosion of new players since 2014. And honestly, I have not seen it really slow down. I've been running at cons. I run at game stores. Well, I ran at game stores before COVID, and it's pretty much been a very consistent influx of new players. But because of that, we've also had a very large influx of certain situations that veteran players are basically beyond at that point, and because of changing situations with society at large. There have also been some interesting situations that have come up from things like players coming into a table and requesting to be referred to by different pronouns than what they may physically appear to be, and some people for some reason having a problem with that or just having trouble getting it down. I know I have trouble a lot, or I had trouble a lot with our other show, The Lab. Mutiny Kitty on that stream goes by they them pronouns, and I would say she, unfortunately. And I finally got it down, but I was very hard pressed, and I really still have to make sure I watch myself closely, because it is the type of thing where it needs to be respected. And that is kind of like on the old school side of etiquette violations. But let's start out with new players. So, Michael, have you found this to be an issue at tables that you run with new players, especially maybe online tables where they join up?
Yeah, so because of the kind of my schedule, I do theater when the world is not how it is now. I also do stand up and such. It's impossible for the friends I know to actually get together. So the last bunch of years, I've been running online just because there's not really much of a choice. I run lesser known games, so on one hand, I find people that are often kind of a good fit for those. But when I've had newer players, a lot of times it's just kind of relaxing back into the sort of teaching someone new at improv, just getting them kind of used to it, sharing the spotlight. For the most part, some of those other things, we always have pronouns put up on the Zoom. Mm-hmm. If we're in person, I've got these table tents, these dry erase ones that we use to have all that information on. And we use consent lists, essentially like lines and bails that they go through, and we, as a group, we have one.
That was an accident, sorry.
But I think for the most part, the types of games I run mean that I either tend not to get lots of people who've never role-played before, but the ones I have that have been usually people I know or at least have a theatrical background or interest, so they're often used to at least having a wide variety of people around them, so that they're a little more used to that aspect of it.
Got it. And that's a wonderful problem to have, sir.
Indeed.
The thing I was kind of speaking to on the new people is one of the things that you have happen with a lot of newer or new players is they come in with the idea that they're jumping into a game where they get to play this bigger than life fantasy character, and they're getting really excited about it. And the one thing they do is they forget that there are 3, 4, 5 other people at the same table, and they are all trying to put forth their stories and and be part of the game. And a lot of times new players jump in and they want to be in every single scene. They want to be part of every single action. And they just try and find ways to make that happen that sometimes can make the situation sometimes uncomfortable, but at least awkward. Because, it becomes that difficulty of, I understand you want to be part of the scene, but you said you were going to the warehouse and they're at the bar. You know what I mean? So it can be that can lead to some situations that are difficult. Have you ever found that you've run up into that monster, Chris?
Me personally, I have run into that monster, and I mean, when I first started playing D&D, like I think a lot of new players don't realize that it's necessarily like a tabletop faux pas per se. And I mean, it's a really easy conversation to have. It's just like, hey, I know you're excited, and and you kind of go from there, without making them feel bad. I know that I had a DM that had to sit me down because I was so excited, like I just wanted to be a part of all of it. And, when you get the explanation that it is collaborative storytelling and that you can't be the Tom Cruise of the Mission Impossible movie every time, it gets a lot easier. One of the things that I've done personally is I will actually kind of sit back and wait my turn, especially if it's a scene I'm not even in. I'll take that particular time where it's like, oh good, I get to have a bathroom break, or I can go grab a drink real fast. I'm not here anyway. I don't know this is happening. And it also helps keep me from metagaming as well. So I found that those are little useful tricks that I do. But in terms of with new players, it's just, I find that a really easy conversation is the best way to handle it. Because we've all been that player at some point.
Yep, and that is probably the number one thing that we're gonna come back to over and over and over again during this conversation. Mm-hmm. The best way to both prevent these situations and to deal with these obstacles to basically everyone having a good time is to make sure that you are open with your conversations with your players at the table. It is the most useful tool possible. And and it 99% of the time it works. It might not work the first time, but it works. Yeah. And so that is kind of a huge thing about this whole situation is, communication. Like when we see any of these answers, we can probably always just say, first off, communication, and then
there's actually some ways. I mean, this also comes because of my background. But I don't have that, as far as that goes, I don't have too much of a problem there because, one, the games I run, there's lots of individual scenes, but also between teaching and improv, I have a lot of experience of kind of setting these characters here, and I pass the spotlight pretty strongly around. So a lot of times, if that person's excited about something, I'll get them started on something, wave part of a scene, reach a breaking point, and then pop back over. I've actually found myself more as a player, the couple times I've played in the last couple of years, taking the spotlight away from the person hogging it and then handing it back out to the other players who aren't getting the shot for it.
Mm-hmm. And that is a wonderful counter that a GM can do to help those situations, is be there as a facilitator for the spotlight, and also, keep the open eye on the other players. You can facilitate and give the spotlight to someone, but if that someone keeps on trying to step back into the spotlight over and over again, is where things can get kind of interesting.
That's kind of where it gets hinky, though.
Yeah, that's where it gets. That's kind of what I was talking about with the awkward and the kind of uncomfortable situations, is when someone is. And it usually is a new player, because veteran players who do this on a regular basis often find themselves without a table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everyone knows that guy at the game store who is always looking for a table, and everyone says, "Oh, we just filled up." You know, and that's
Well,
because he keeps on jumping into the games and trying to take over and run the games and direct the plot, and it can be very, very cumbersome for the other players at the table to deal with that.
sometimes just throwing it directly to. So I did this at Gen Con. We had these two guys kept shutting this woman down during Dogs in the Vineyard. So finally, we go blah blah blah, and we just go, that idea you had was pretty cool. What was it? And just handed it to her because it's sometimes just that forceful thing of, yeah, just a second, you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a D&D. I run a lot of Adventures League. If you guys know what that is, both of you guys know
Yes.
what Adventures League? Okay, I run a bunch of Adventures League, and I had an Adventures League table that had 3 brand new players at it, and the other 4 were friends and veterans, and we had one guy on the new table who was that over enthusiastic guy who wanted to be in every scene. And then we had his best friend, who was a good neutral player. You know, he came into the game and he was already decently strong at role play, and he was one of those people who was in love with the idea of playing D&D. So he came in with the rules already memorized.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing we'll get to in a second. But he also had his girlfriend with him, and she was one of those people who was so shy, and his best friend, whenever she got into a scene, his best friend was the one going, "Well, say something," because she would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna try and hit him," and his best friend would be like, "Well, describe how you're gonna hit him." And I finally just had to go, "Well, I tell you what, why don't we do this? You know, if she wants to hit him and you want to describe how you hit him, you can ask her and give her suggestions, but don't just yell at her to describe it." You know, she is doing what she's comfortable with, and we're all here to have a good time. And since she's been laughing and having a good time with everyone else, it's obvious that she's achieved that. I was like,
Yeah.
if this is her comfort level, then we let her be at her comfort level. If we play more sessions and you guys come back to more sessions and she gets more comfortable and opens up to the table, that's the freaking goal, man. You know, making someone feel comfortable so they can relax, and maybe they jump into it deeper. Maybe they don't. Maybe this is their comfort zone. So, you know, reading a table and seeing a table and watching interactions between people and knowing how to kind of because he was not trying to be mean to her. He was excited about being there, and he wanted them all to have the same experience he was having, without
Right.
considering whether they would enjoy the experience he was having.
Yeah, people forget like spotlight isn't like kind of the actual terms for it, but you don't necessarily want equality. You kind of want equity, which is
Yeah.
probably wrong. But basically, like the person who's actually happy to sit back and be much more passive, toss it to them here and there. But if they're not comfortable with it, it starts to become not fun for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and that's really the thing too, which I think we talked about this on the last dinner conversations, was not everybody's going to have the same experience at the table, because everybody expects a different thing from the table, and the thing as a player that we have to understand about our other players is that some people are just there for the story. They don't necessarily have to be the hero. You know, which, I mean, that I'm not. I want to be the guy that like kicks the knoll in the face, but like
And
I
then gets
know
his foot bit
people.
off.
Yeah, and then gets his. Oh, absolutely. I'm all for the consequences. Like, yep, I asked for that. You know. But not everybody is, and that's okay. And they're like they're happy to just laugh when I get my foot bit off because I kicked the knoll in the face, you know. So yeah, I mean, it is important to remember that we all are there for different things from the game, and we all have fun in our own way.
Yep.
So
And one of the other things that's a big thing at table etiquette is, and this does not happen a lot, but cheating.
no,
No,
Yeah.
I have a kind of probably a different outlook on it than a lot of people do, and that's because of one of my regulars who used to come to my tables all the time, and he was a little old man. He was probably in his late 50s, early 60s, and he cheated like mad. But after a few sessions, because people would come up, he just cheating. He lies about his dice rolls and everything like that. So after a few sessions of him coming up and people telling me that and everything like that, I began to observe something. He comes to the game table. He barely role plays. He cheats on his dice rolls in combat. But in all honesty, he has a tablet open in front of him, and he's like just not paying attention to the game, not watching the game. And he keeps track of it enough to know what we're doing, but he doesn't really track how combat's going or anything like that. And the way I read it is, he's coming up to the game table because he just wants to be with people. He's looking for human connection. And so I started testing it out, and I would be like, he would roll a number, he'd lie about it, and I'd tell him it missed. And he didn't pay any attention. So what I started doing with his rolls is, if the party was doing well and they didn't need extra damage or healing or whatever he was trying to do, or what his character was designed to do, I would basically tell him he missed or hit randomly to leave it random, and he would never paid attention at all. Now, if the party was doing poorly, and he rolled, and I needed a Dosas Machina to get them out of it, I would let him hit to get the extra damage in and everything like that. Now, in one hand, he took a table away from someone who may have been a better player and not cause as many issues. But on the other hand, he was just really freaking lonely.
Yeah. Yeah, and in cases like that, absolutely. It was just like, I definitely understand the idea of like, it's like I need friends. Especially with everything that's been going on the last year, like I don't get out, I don't get to hang out with people. Like my son actually the other day said that I'm his bestest friend, and I was like, that is sweet, and oh my god, I spend way too much time at home.
I don't want you to be a loser, son.
Yeah.
Trust me, there's other people out there.
Trust me, there are other people, and we're just like, dang. But yeah, like in cases like that, absolutely, like they're there for the human element, and they need they need people in their lives, and that's awesome. The flip side of that coin, though, is we come back to what we were talking about originally, is the people that they're cheating because they want to be in the spotlight, and those are the ones that are more the problem. Like where it's just like, it's like, I rolled a natural 20. No, you didn't. You rolled a 1. Like,
or you just rolled a miss, whatever.
Yeah, like, or you missed. Yeah. So
I think game system actually is, because I don't have a lot of cheating, partly because of the game systems we use, partly because if it's online, it's open, and if it's in person, and we're all there. But the game system doesn't punish, or failure doesn't just turn into you missed, nothing happened, which is a boring result. But when failure isn't something that punishes you, but makes something happen that's more interesting, then I find it gets to a point there's just not a reason to cheat, because I've had players literally go, God, I hope I fail this roll. Like, the most interesting thing to happen right now is to fail. Yep. And I think some systems really lend itself to that, but some systems, failure is just either nothing happens, which, is boring, or it's a punishment. So, some people are going to cheat. They should be playing a different game.
Absolutely. And the big thing about D&D is, usually when you're making a roll, well, almost every system, when you're making a roll, it's because it is something critical. That's why you're actually doing the roll. It's because you're taking a risk. And so, and when you fail, there's always consequences, whether it be story in a lot of the less crunchy RPGs, or an actual mechanical consequence in the more crunchy RPGs. So, there's always a penalty for failing. But in the less crunchy, story-heavy RPGs, like one of Michael and I's favorite, Powered by the Apocalypse, even success can be painful because it's heavily story motivated, and there are things that react off of what happens in the story. There's powers, abilities, there's GM caveats that happen because of things that happen in story. So it is, there's tons of different consequences for all types of actions, which kind of leads me into another aspect of it, of table etiquette. And that is, trying to come into when you come into a table, and this is for anyone, veteran, new players, anyone. It's a whole thing of you have to be able to read the room, and so when you get to the table, you got to find out what the energy is of the table. What are these people doing? What are they dying to do? And you'll get it real quick. If they spend like the first hour just doing telling story after story after story in character, you're at a heavy RP table and you might not even touch the dice that evening. But if you come into the table and the first hour and a half of the game is a long, grueling combat, and everyone is super excited and stoked to be there, then you're on a combat heavy table, and you're gonna play Descent for the evening. But the thing is, match the energy of the table. If you signed up to be at that table, number one, you could be rude and walk away. But you've also signed up to be at that table, and you have given your allegiance to those players that you're going to at least be there for that evening and at least try and have a good time. So and the reason I bring this up is because there are a lot of pickup games on Roll20. Oh my God, it's amazing how many pickup games there are on Roll20 right now. And a lot of new players who don't have tables and, because of COVID, don't have a game store to go meet people at, they jump into these pickup games. And I have a friend, he teaches overseas, and he does this a lot. And he has nightmare stories of these games that are the GM trying to get people to role play and this silence on the line, and or someone going, "Can I roll for that?"
Right.
You know what I mean? And so but that's the whole point. Match the room, and that goes for not just players. That goes for the GMs. If you're throwing out all these plot hooks and these keys and clues to RPing or story hooks, and no one's biting. But the first time you throw out a goblin, there's a roar of applause. You found what your table wants. Feed them.
Yeah.
I always wish there was better language in role-playing games to describe both games and players, because there's certain types of games I would never. If it's a dungeon crawl combat game, no. I have no desire. So if I don't play very often because I don't have enough to do as a player, because there's two things. One, the improvisational part of me that is used to, sometimes I don't want to take over a table because it would be easy for me to do, because I'm used to, again, performing in front of audiences, doing improv shows. So I hold back a lot on that, but also it just doesn't keep me as involved as a GM does.
Yeah.
But when I have played before, if you come into a game, a lot of people treat D&D as if it's so many different things, that you have some people that it's essentially it's Gloomhaven with different rules. You're coming through and you're fighting, and for some people it is like Amber Diceless, except that there's Amber combat on occasion.
Yeah. Well, there's combat in Amber. It's just kind of predetermined.
Yeah, but you don't move. I move 4 hexes and do this.
Yeah. We're playing BattleTech.
Now that's what I'd be up.
Huh?
That's what I would do.
But yeah, so and when that's why I mentioned Descent. You know what I mean? Descent is, if ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there and you love hack and slash, you love the classic dungeon crawl, Descent is the board game for you. It comes with 1.5 billion minis. It comes with literal customizable dungeons that you can lay out. Plus, it comes with a bunch of scenarios. I mean, it's probably like a year's worth of play in one box set. And then there's expansions for it too. So it's like, if you like that type of style, that's your jam. At Dinner Game, we always say one big thing. There is no wrong way to game, as long as everyone you're gaming with agrees to what you're doing and can have fun doing it. You know what I mean? Because, I would never invite Michael to a dungeon crawl because Michael would not have a good time. I probably just wouldn't even invite Michael if we were playing D&D.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I get, if I'm in a game that we're using the system isn't working for what we're doing, I get frustrated. I'm a big system matters person.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I also know the kind of games I like, so I
absolutely.
I have found because of the types of games I run, I've had very good luck finding people like randomly online for stuff because they're looking for a certain experience and not this kind of large overarching experience. And it has done wonders for just the tone of the tables I've ran.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're playing Unknown Armies, you know what you're coming in for and you're excited for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're playing Blades in the Dark, you know exactly what to expect, and you're there for it because you knew coming in what to expect. And that's probably one of the things that DMs can do in order to make sure that there's less of those uncomfortable situations is when you have new players, take a few minutes and communicate what this game is about or what you trying to run at this table. Like, you may be playing D&D, but you might be trying to run a story heavy game, and you just let the new player know, hey, I know you're new, this is the first game. I run what they call very story heavy tables. So combat's not as big focus here. If that's what you were looking for, I mean, it's cool. Everyone likes what they like. It's like, but I don't think you're going to get what you want out of my table. So if there's, and especially if there's another newbie table around, give them options. Because number one, a first experience with gaming should be as good as possible because that's how we get to grow our hobby. You know what I mean? And so trying to get that person to the right GM and the right table style, that's a huge incentive for driving people into this hobby and sealing that deal and making that love connection. It's
Absolutely. Yeah, and a great example of that too, like like you guys were saying, like I'm not a big dungeon crawler player myself. Like I had one friend where they invited me to play Warhammer 40K, and while I understand there is a great deal of lore that goes into it, and there's a wonderful story, and I've heard a lot of the story, and it's amazing, I'm not a big war game guy. Like, I like to get in there. I like to put on another persona for a little while. That's how I like to escape, and that's a personal thing, While other people are the exact opposite. They don't want to be another person, but they want to blow up the little dudes on the table, and that's great. Like, so, and yeah, like we were saying in the chat, like different games, like everybody has a game that's definitely going to speak to them and a system that's going to speak to them the best. And it's important that they, that the GM explains what type of game their players are walking into,
That's why I really wish there was a much more common thing for new players, because I think most of them come in like Adventure League or something is a pretty common way for someone to get their first taste if it's not from a friend, but to actually have things where here are a bunch of different types of games, because D&D's strength is not one shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like that one experience at the table gives you a bit of a taste, but that's a game that's designed to be done over a bunch of sessions. All this stuff builds where you have games that work so well for one shots. I think if more people sometimes have an opportunity to see, here's a condensed experience that isn't counting on you being here for 4 to 8 weeks to
or
really
longer.
kind of or longer, to really sort of flow with it. I think I could just be a better onboarding of people, because they can also be like, oh, this role playing thing like Dusk City Outlaws, that maybe isn't for me, but this other one, Tech Noir, looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then get a totally different experience that way, but not be in this is going to last for like 6 to 12 months to the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yep.
We're doing a 30-year campaign.
Yeah, yep. I am very guilty of that one right there. Like I said, like I was telling Michael before the show, I ran a 6-year campaign in 7C, the first edition, and I mainly ran it so I could flirt with my wife. So, and she wasn't my wife at the time, but it worked out.
Come on, guys! I know you've got work, but you need to be here. We're having the game this week, one way or the other.
I might actually ask her out this time.
In 3 years, man.
But yeah, so one of the big things that is probably the most difficult aspect of etiquette at the table is individual respect for your other players. And one of the biggest hurdles in modern gaming that we're coming across is the advent of the new social norms that are out there, and the fact that there are people now who choose their own pronouns, to basically choose their gender or to have no gender. And this has been one of the shittiest situations that I've ever been a part of, because it is literally a respect issue. I mean, I know sometimes there were like the situation I had with Mutiny Kitty, where I would just forget or mispronoun her, and everything like that, and it was my fault. But I always apologized, and I strove to do better. And it's basically, I was trying to make sure that I was respecting her, and I was failing, but not intentionally, not trying to be rude about it. And and this happens a lot with basically everybody, but I've seen the worst instances with some of our more veteran gamers, and it can be just like mine, where I was just doing it accidentally. But there's also people who will intentionally either misgender, or there's a new situation that's come out. They will never use a gender pronoun. They will only refer to them as by their name.
Kick those people out.
Well, I know.
Like the accidental stuff. One thing for the accidental stuff, I play with a lot of trans people. Like my iHunt game is 3 trans people. I play with a lot of non-binary as well. I don't want to be stereotypical, but being a theater person, I know a wide variety. I'm a cis white straight dude. But so I'm at the point where I don't misgender my players, but I worry about misgendering the characters, because I have people that don't just have the cis white experience in a lot of the games I run. So their characters are much more free to have like a wider range without getting into that insulting sort of place. So one thing I ask them to do always is on our Zoom call, and I will look there when I'm referring to the character. They have their names, their pronouns, but also their characters, and actually usually first, their character's name and pronoun, so that when I'm double checking it, I can see it. Or I've got those dry erase table tents, if we're in person, that we put those down, so it's something I just get used to checking.
Yep, and that's one of the things we do here on the show, on our programs, is on the nameplate. Like guys have your genders and your pronouns on the nameplate, but on our shows we have the pronouns under the name, and then we have the pronouns under the character name, so that they're mainly there for me, because as I said, I make a lot of mistakes, but they're also there because that's something that should be just part of the natural order of how you give out respect to people at your table. And Michael, you're right. I mean, the people who are doing it on purpose, they are the ones that you don't want at your table. And I made a comment, and you responded to it on TikTok. I said that role-playing games and the role-playing game genre and the role-playing game community is inherently progressive. And you pointed out some things that you kind of said it was not as progressive as all that. And but the biggest thing for me is the reason I consider the role-playing community progressive is because the role-playing community today is about 70% larger than it was 10 years ago. And that majority of population explosion is all coming from people who are now the ones who are saying, I am, my pronouns are they, them. I'm non-binary. And so that basically, that influx of people is what I think has skewed the RPG community into a more progressive mindset. And there have been horrible freaking instances of the community having horrible representation of this, such as the fiasco with Wizards of the Coast. That's just
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, especially with, like Michael was saying, with smaller creators, their focus is around that. We played. I
haven't heard what happened at Wizards of the Coast.
You didn't hear?
There's multiple. If you look up Orion Black or Person of Color Gamer, what happened with the what was the the Candlekeep Mysteries.
Kind of
Yeah,
Keep Mysteries
basically
book, yeah.
Okay.
they've been trying to do like diversity, but they've been bungling it spectacularly. Um, yeah, I will say I think it's trending towards more progressive, but I think there's a lot of old school kickback
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a big problem.
That's kind of where I was going with that. The progressives are very large in number, but since it's basically a commonplace thing, the regressives, if you will, are the ones who want everything to be the way it was. They're the ones usually who are the most vocal, and they're the ones who make the biggest stink about it. And oh, by the way, Fox Rider, it was Candlekeep Mysteries. They had a biopic writer on that, and he was contracted to write it with consideration to that in it, and he turned in his writing, and they basically completely rewrote it, and they still try to put his name on it.
Yeah, speaking as a writer, that's you don't do that. You don't do that to any writer ever for any reason. That's not cool. No.
And
Oh,
I'm not talking about they edited it and then left it. They didn't. Oh, and another thing, they didn't show him the rewrite
He
before
was
they went to
trying.
publish.
He was trying to. Or they I don't remember the pronouns. They were trying to basically take a race that had considered like savage and evil and actually give them more of a culture, more interest, even possibly as a player character. Now, I don't know if he went further than they wanted with actually making player characters, but they at least given this, and I don't remember, it's like a water dwelling race. I don't remember the specifics. Um,
They already
all
were a
this,
playable race. It's the those little tree frogs people,
yeah,
the
and they went
grunt?
back to like primitive and savage was all over
and they were
the descriptions.
slavers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he was
so
basically revamping the race or creating a new version of the race. So yeah, and they rewrote it and this trashed it, took away all of his ideas, and tried to still put it out there with his name so they could claim racial diversity. And yeah, it was freaking horrible. But that's not etiquette. That's just fucking being horrible.
Yeah. What is it? You don't get credit for claiming to be an ally anymore.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
actually be an ally. But the other thing is, with the whole situation with older players, another thing that is a poor etiquette choice at the table that happens a hell of a lot is older players, and a lot of times they think they're doing this because they're being helpful. But older players dictating to new players, or more experienced players, should say, dictating to new players how they should play a character, how
uh,
they should play a class, how they should act in combat. I had an almost table flipping incident where I had one player who was a veteran player. He showed up at the game and combat started, and he began going, "You should do this, and you should do that, and you should this, and you should that." And most of the people at the table knew it was Adventures League, so they were listening and buying in wholeheartedly. One of the players at the table, not new, knew what he was doing, and was building up this whole resentment about the situation. We went on a 10-minute break. We stepped outside. I asked him if he was okay. He told me, yeah, yeah, yeah. The guy's just kind of annoying. And I was like, okay, fine. If you want me to talk to him, I will. And he was like, no, no, no. It's fine. I went back inside. He came back inside. 20 minutes later, he literally looked at the guy and was like, do you want to play my fucking character? And then they got in a huge argument, and he stormed off the table. He stormed out the door, slammed the door, came back inside because he forgot all his stuff, made a big deal of packing up all his shit, and then instead of leaving, he went and sat on one of the couches and fumed, like right by the table we were playing at. And I asked him if it was okay and if he wanted me to talk to the guy.
Yeah.
When you're given a chance to communicate something and you feel uncomfortable, take it. Even if you're not giving the
Absolutely.
fucking chance, say something.
I can see where it can be a thing where it, especially, was this a newer person? Was it a newer person to the game?
Neither one of
Who?
them were new to the game.
Okay, I can see some where they can think like, oh, it'll be okay, and it is awkward to ask someone to tell someone to chill out. Um, I some people are not going to be as good about being forthright about that, and it
Yeah.
sucks when it gets to that point.
Yep. I mean, and
Yeah.
I could see from his expression darkening, especially on right up to that point we took the break. I could see that he was getting on his nerves, and so I was like, if it's getting on your nerves, I'll talk to him. You don't have to talk to him, because that's what I was really worried about, that he had gotten to that point where he couldn't even really hold a conversation with a guy anymore. So I was like, you don't have to talk to him. I'll take care of it. And I won't be rude. I won't be mean. The guy is obviously trying to be helpful. He just doesn't know how bad he's stepping on your toes. And so all he needs is a redirect, And he was like, no, it's fine, and it apparently wasn't fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing that I've seen a few times where it's just like it's fine, it's not fine, it's fine. Like, dude, if it's not fine, like like the GM is there as a buffer to make sure everybody's having fun too. Um, like, and it's one thing I think where it's just like if you have a new player at the table, like a good example, like I've only just recently dabbled in playing Paladin in 5e. I have no idea how any of that works.
Well, number one, you're broken.
I have noticed that part. Somebody was just like, I think somebody was joking and was just like, you can hit a dude with 5 smites. What? No, that's actually really cool, but like, so like when you have a more experienced player, it's like, oh yeah, okay, so if you wanted to do something like this, which is, I think if you're going to offer advice in a at a table where it's like, well, I mean, like, because you're this type of character, if you wanted to do something like this, that's an option, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or, but if it looks like the person actually requires the assistance, if they look like they've got something figured out, let them do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let them have the ball and run with it,
And the biggest thing about that statement is, even if you disagree with what they're doing.
Right.
That's the big capper. Because a lot of experienced players, you can see them grinding their teeth when that newbie is, choosing not to use his smites in the middle and on his paladin because, he wants to save him. It's like, we're only here for 4 hours, dude. This is probably the only fight we're gonna get into tonight.
The GM can.
Go ahead.
Sorry, keep going. Sorry.
Oh, I was say Foxwriter just laid out a horror story in chat. Foxwriter said, I had someone do that to me, but he was teaching me, quote unquote, but I wasn't even allowed to roll the dice. I basically said, I think I like to stab the golem, and he'd say, nah, you should use this spell, and then he'd roll the dice for me, and I was like, how the hell is this teaching me? I left for 10 minutes, and the guy didn't even notice. That is horrific table etiquette, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Honestly, the GM should step in, and you can step in without it being a thing where you're like yelling at one person. I mean, with younger actors, they'll try to give ideas to someone. I'm like, God, stop. 15 people are trying to say something to someone. It gets confusing. We are dealing with this one-on-one. Mm-hmm. Or it can be like, wait, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And then, oh my God, that was the GM? Nope, walk away. Yeah.
Oh shit!
That person should not.
Oh God, that's the GM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you found a different table, Foxrider.
Absolutely.
No. Yeah, so, I think if the GM just focuses on one person and is like, "What do you want to do?" and then shuts other people down from trying to backseat game for people, I think it can help, and it can be something where it can be pretty fair too.
Yep.
Because if what do you want to do? The same person. If someone else happens to say something, and be like, I'm asking him.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's one of the big things as a GM, and this is another thing that people have to understand. As a GM in a gaming group, you're kind of an arbitrator of every situation. So you're there to not only facilitate the game itself with the mechanics and the story and the plot, but you're also there as a social referee for the players at your table.
Yeah.
So, and I always say this, as I take being a GM incredibly seriously for one very important reason. Life is precious. And these people just voluntarily gave me 4 to 6 hours of their lives. And they gave it to me saying, "We want to have a good time. Please help us." And I said yes. And they're never going to get that time back. Ever.
Yeah.
Does your machine that sucks out their life that goes underneath the table?
Yes,
Does yours still
it
work? Because mine
does.
is broken.
But
Sorry. That's a GM secret.
That's why we live forever. But yeah, so it is. Oh, and Foster, I said it was a convention game. Oh, wait. Speaking of people saying it's all right when they're upset at another player, usually that person thinks they can deal with more than they can, or they're already at that point of no return. Sometimes I feel like the GM needs to step in to mitigate regardless. Yeah, and I probably should have, Magnus. It definitely was a situation where it was. That I can't remember. There was an extending circumstance that I couldn't remember. I finally remembered. That table was 11 people because my other Adventures League GM canceled, and half his table asked if they could join my table just as a one shot, and I literally just threw a one shot together for them. And the one shot literally consisted of me doing 30 minutes of exposition in the beginning with a little bit of role play, and then we just played a combat for the rest of the night because that big a group is only going to do a combat for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what the problem with my GMing on that night was, is I was spread way too thin. And I really should have set up an assistant GM for me, but everything was chaos. So, but yeah, it definitely, I should have stepped in. I should have, been more hardline and said, okay, look, I'm going to go talk to him because it's obviously upsetting you.
Yeah.
But like I said, I was not enough jelly over too much toast. So.
Mm-hmm.
I did a 13-player vampire campaign for a couple of years.
Oh, Jesus.
That would go between 9 and 13, and we almost never touched the rules. Then we tried to do that same group of 13 in Champions, and that was that was a mistake.
You are a brave man, sir.
We're going to get 13 people together to
foolish.
do fucking algebra.
No bravery. I was young and dumb.
Yeah, but with Champions, you're getting 13 people together to do algebra.
Also, we got through half a battle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like high school, early college days where you could do like 6-hour games because everyone was up for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I'm lucky to get 3-outers out of these fools. Another thing I did in Champions is I played a character that could increase or decrease his mass almost exponentially. And with it, he had invulnerability. So he decreased his mass, float weight up in the air, and then increase his mass exponentially and basically become a meteor. But
just
I had to
your enemies.
I had to do the math on how much damage I would do every single time.
It was a different Supers game. I didn't want to do all the math stuff. It was one called Guardians. I'm like, I'll just make them really strong. But the way it worked was like one person would roll like 16d6 for a laser blast. I rolled 1d6, but then I added 248 to it. So it ended up very broken. I just whip him at the horizon. Okay, he's gone.
And
what do you do next?
Foxrider, the reason we stream so late is because we have people on the West Coast and people on the East Coast. So we have to make allowances because if we didn't stream so late, Chris wouldn't be able to play. It literally, when Chris jumped on, it was 5 p.m. where he was.
Yeah.
So that's why we stream so late, because we want everyone to be able to game. But the other thing that I was going to say about the whole situation with etiquette at the table and respecting the other players is one of the things that we as players in general have to be incredibly wary of, and it was a subject of an entire other show, and that is gatekeepers. Now, like I said, we did an entire show about it, so we're not going to super delve into it, but gatekeeping is one of those things, and it kind of keys off of the old Grognard telling another player how to play their character. You know,
Yeah.
that is probably the one of the mildest forms of gatekeeping our hobby has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the other styles gatekeeping are just like, they're okay. Number one, usually gatekeeping is pretty easy to spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not subtle. It's almost always, kind of very, very much obvious. I guess couldn't find a better word. But the other thing is that when you see or are part of some situations where there's gatekeeping happening, I mean, depending on who you are, because I understand some people just can't do confrontation, even like a softly worded, considerate confrontation.
Yeah.
So
Blatant's a good word for it, Fox, by the way.
thank you very much, Fox. And but if you encounter gatekeeping and you feel comfortable saying something about it, then absolutely call it out.
Absolutely. Because I mean, it's the same thing where the thing with tabletop etiquette is it's like anything in tabletop. If it's keeping other players, regardless of whether or not they're the GM or they're your fellow adventurers or heroes, or what have you, then because gatekeeping takes away from the fun. But any sort of like lapse in tabletop etiquette can lead to a decline in fun for your fellow players. And and honestly, to me, like I feel like the GM is, I feel like the GM can honestly sometimes be one of the players as well in their own way, because they get to play with everyone in a multitude of ways. So if it's taking away fun in any regard, whether it's gatekeeping or telling people how to play their character, or just honestly, it takes it's obviously it takes. There should be that communication, because it is a decline in etiquette in that regard. So
the big thing about that also comes around to the fact that one of the biggest things about gatekeepers is there's two types. There's a type of gatekeeper who feels they're just conveying information, or they're just expressing their opinion, and they don't think there's anything wrong with what they're saying. And when you call them out on it, you almost always see the deer in the headlights look. They didn't understand what they were doing. And I call that innocent gatekeeping. Although it's not innocent, it still hurts the hobby and hurts the community. But then there's the gatekeepers who you call them out on it, and they say, well, they shouldn't be such a fucking snowflake, or they should what I say shouldn't be able to affect them, because they shouldn't care about what I say. You know what I mean? And so those are the times when, once again, we come back to it's time for them to leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The type that drives me nuts that's like that is the one who has like, oh, here's just a logical argument I have against representing people like you in the game that we're doing. And they decide that they're going to make that an argument and keep pushing it. And then when you're like, well, wait, you don't want to, we can't bring up ideas. It's like, not this one.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff that we can mention about that, but we won't get into that because it is, like I said, we did an entire other show about that. So if you want to watch that, go back to last month's dinner conversations and watch the show on gatekeeping. But basically, fuck them.
With tabletop etiquette, I mean, there's a thing in improv where you just make your partner awesome.
Yeah.
If your goal is to make your partner awesome, they're going to do the same to you and everything else. Everyone's going to be cool. And if you do that, then everyone's going to have fun, because if you look over and, oh, this person's not having a good time, I need to make sure and take that as my own personal responsibility to make sure we're all having fun. And if everyone does that, you have far fewer problems.
Yeah. And Magus Noir, time and place. When you're talking about the people who basically are saying, it shouldn't matter what I say and I shouldn't blah blah blah, there ain't no time and there ain't no place. You know what I mean? If they find a time and place, then everyone who's at that time and place, fuck them too.
It's true.
So, sorry, I get mad. And
there are
Fox
places
Rider,
they can go, and I am nowhere near those places.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Fox Rider, yeah, don't worry about confrontation, sweetie. I'll do it for you because I like it. So anyway, when we come right back around to the whole aspects of the new person at the table, new people are almost always the biggest victims of people either gatekeeping or bullying or just trying to override them and control their characters and actions. And it is kind of one of those situations where, as a GM, oh, well, as Foxfire pointed out, sometimes it can be the fucking GM. But as a GM, you got to watch those scenes. It's almost similar to the situation I was describing where the friend was telling the person to just role play it or, say it or whatever like that. I had to, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't trying to make her feel bad. He was trying to encourage her to get involved. But he wasn't taking into account that she was as involved as she comfortably could be. Yeah. And so, that's the type of situation where you as a GM, you need to step in and you need to remind people that everyone has different comfort levels. And that is, like I said, we're always going to say it's communication, but that is the best communication you can have with that person. Because, that is going to ensure that the person who's being targeted feels like they've been represented, even if they're in a situation like that where they're too shy to do their own representation. If you're an advocate for them, and that's actually how I describe myself as a game master. I am an advocate for my players. I create a world and a story for them, and then I bring them into it and let them inhabit it. I don't try and control the plot except for except for building out any NPCs that are necessary and then having them interact. And then I have a meta plot that spans everything else. But other than that, they're the catalyst for the story. And they drive story. But if someone is not feeling comfortable in the situation, then they're not going to take part in the story. They're going to start withdrawing and they're going to start shutting down. So communicating and making sure that the people can feel comfortable is the best thing you can do. And then policing, and this is a shitty word to use, I'm sorry, but policing other players who may be trying to infringe on those people. And it, like I said, it might not be for the worst reasons. It might be with the best intentions. But they're still infringing on their right to choose how they experience the game.
I think you need to protect yourself. The Gauntlet, which I have done a bunch of running with, has an open table policy where one person, the greatest gift he gave me was he goes, this isn't working for me. I'm gonna go ahead and take the open table. And because he was not there to play the game that was actually advertised and was fighting against every second of it. So I think the idea of, if it's your game master, leave the table.
Oh, absolutely.
Like at that point, or if it's just not working for you, the ability for someone to go, this isn't working, thank you, but hope you all have a good time. I'm going to remove myself can be a really good thing to do sometimes. I think people feel it's going to be rude when they'll be fine, particularly if these aren't like friends of yours. Friends of yours should know better. But yeah, if these are sort of random people, their lives will go on.
So the other thing about that is, have you guys ever seen, what is it? The Something Crab on YouTube. Oh God, let me see if I can find it real quick. He does D&D.
Crit Crab.
Crit Crab. Yeah, Crit Crab on YouTube. He does D&D stories about D&D games, and people send them to him, and he basically just narrates them. And he has, like, you can just scroll through and see things like racist paladin ruins game and everything like that. So yeah, it's there is definitely a plethora of people who either don't get what etiquette is supposed to be or don't care.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of difficult when the people just don't get it. It's easy when they don't care. But when they just don't get it and don't understand it, that can lead to some really hard situations for game masters and everything like that. But it leads into the next the more touchy subject of etiquette at the game table, and that is running games with people who are neurodiverse. Because a lot of times, and both my kids are autistic. I'm ADHD, and so yeah, and so it is neurodiversity is almost as actually a very common trait in our community, because a lot of people who are neurodiverse want and feel the need for outlets like this, and want to feel like they're part of communities like this where they can just join in and be accepted just because they showed up for the day, and it doesn't matter what they do, they're going to be accepted for it because they came to play a game with other people.
Yeah.
And I'm saying what they did in a limited format, but a lot of people with neurodiversities have a lot of social issues, whether it be social anxiety or like my daughter has Asperger's, and so having a conversation with her can be very difficult for strangers because she doesn't have the standard cues everyone else does. She doesn't get the same facial expressions. She may look like she is totally deadpanning, and then you get to the you get to the butt of the joke, and then she explodes in laughter. But up until that point, you didn't even know that you were telling her a joke, because it's just like dead stare right at her. So there's a lot of things to be said with neurodiversity. And one of the more difficult aspects of this is, how can you make a determination about whether or not a person is neurodiverse for these situations? Because it gets really difficult to sit there and say, you are being rude to this person. And then you get the deer in the headlights look, and they don't get it. That's kind of where I was going with the whole they don't get it thing. There are blank faces is your default, and that I completely get that. Claudia's, my daughter, is that's her default too, and so and luckily enough, she was raised in a very accepting household, and she was never required to mask, and she does mask in public, because I've seen her at her job, and so she does mask in public, but at home she's just Claudia. So it's and with her friends she's just Claudia. So it's there is that certain level of comfort to drop the mask, but oh yeah, Magnus was saying he does like Reddit threads. But the big thing about the neurodiversity in etiquette is that when you're communicating with someone who is having a faux pas, that is one of the big considerations you have to make, because you might be sitting there thinking that they're being rude up until the point that you call them out on it, and then you may have called, and if you do it in a aggressive or a punitive manner, like you make them feel bad for having done it, like you're trying to punish them, you could be attacking someone who literally doesn't get it and may need help with the situation. So that's one of the things that I always say about communication is make sure that and it's shitty, because when you encounter people who are being assholes, it backfires. But you have to make sure you're taking the high road when you're communicating with them, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's happening. So you always have to approach the situation. The default is, if you don't know, just assume that it is something extenuating. Because if you don't, if something is coming up, it will be hurtful to them. It'll be painful for you because you will have unintentionally made someone feel bad. And it possibly could make the situation difficult for everyone at the table, depending on how the situation rolls out.
Well, and yeah, because the thing to remember too, and one of the reasons why it's important to take the high road is because while some therapists are gamers and some gamers are therapists. Not all gamers are therapists, you know. So, I mean, it's important to have the gentle conversation first, you know. It was like, hey, that's not cool. Maybe more for this reason, you know, because it makes this player, you know, a little uncomfortable. If it's at all possible, if we could avoid that, and you know, again, for the sake of taking the high road, and it's good to be gentle. If the person is just being an asshole, then you know, like you've had the conversation maybe one, two, even three times. It depends on the person and it depends on what's happening. Then it's like, look, we already talked about this, and I tried, you know, like I tried to be gentle, and here we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to address the comment that was just made by Cellular Smoke, he says, "Have any of you ever had players at a table fill out a comfort do not include survey in session zero?" We
Yes.
have
Yep.
pinned up in our Discord for all the players and all the cast sections of it is a PDF of Monty Cook's gaming consent form, and it is a very good and it's a very good non-granular form to utilize for people who are going to be coming into a new game with new faces and people they have not met, including GMs, because it allows for a good, strong baseline of what everyone at the table is going to be comfortable with. So yeah, I like, and I haven't actually made you guys fill one out yet because I forgot to, but we still haven't gotten to the game yet, so that's perfectly fine. So you
Yep.
go ahead and you put that out there and make sure that they fill it out, and you as a GM fucking read it. I fill one out too as a GM. That way, it's kind of a way of me saying, this is what I'm comfortable with. If it doesn't match what you're comfortable with, I will definitely exclude what you're not comfortable with. But if it does match, you can expect these themes to come up. You know what I mean? So it gives them a very clear, concise way of knowing what your gaming style is with a literal checklist.
Yep.
I use a Google Sheets that I color code so that I can actually put through. It's like whatever is furthest right is essentially with like lines, veils. Some of it will be like not for me. Because like a certain player's like it's fine if it happens, but just not to me. That way I can actually put on the whatever the thing is itself, just the color of it, so I can just know. Okay, green, we're good with it. Yellow, we've got off screen. It's fine. We don't want to see it. Red, nope, not in the game.
Is it still based off of the general questionnaire, or is it something you developed yourself?
It's something. So this isn't I've been using it before. Monty Cook put that one out because with the Gauntlet community, they use it. So ever since they've used it, I've started using one. I think Monster Hearts actually, not Monster Hearts. I'm sorry, iHunt has a really great one that goes along with it. But I basically use the Gauntlet one that I have done a little bit of adaptation on myself for, and lots of blank spaces, people to put in their own stuff.
Would you mind sharing? Would you mind sharing the link to it?
It is
You don't
in
have
my
to do it in
link
chat.
tree. It is in my link tree
Oh.
on TikTok. However, that is on my main account. It is. I don't have it on the other one. Or actually, I literally have it up because I made a video about it yesterday. My new account does not have enough to have the link tree yet. So this is. Yeah, I'll actually put it in here.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Excellent.
actually still happen to have the
Oh wait,
drive.
Nightbot won't let you do it.
Oh no!
Yeah, you're not an admin on this.
out.
No links. Yeah, we've had porn bots come in and try and link in. So there it goes in Google Docs.
I just shared it in our personal chat with y'all, and it is on my link tree for Michael Matthews Jr. In not on my watch. Stop
Dun,
posting.
dun, dun. Nightbot is very
No
dramatic.
Nightbot!
And he timed you out for 5 seconds. All right, and there's a link to the Google Docs for his form, for Michael's form. I am going to take a look at it myself because I like the idea of the color coding. The Monty Cook's form is divided up into areas of of types of things that can happen, but it's not really color coded. It's just what's your comfort level in boxes. So I like the idea of color coding because then I can just automatically go, it's green or it's yellow or it's apparently light brown is the least comfortable with. Is that
We
not for
also
me?
like the light brown in this particular one is not. Yeah, that's specifically not for me, which means it might be cool. One of the ones I liked for well, this kind of comes from palettes for microscope, but I think it was also in iHunt is 100% enthusiastic consent. Like this is something I actually want to see in there, and they can put because normally you've got bad stuff on the right,
Mm-hmm.
but you can put in good stuff too. I mean, like if romance is like I've had plenty of games where romance is a thing, like consensual kissing or romance. Yes, please. Like this, they very much want to see. It's a way of also saying, hey, I'd like this to be in the game more.
Yeah, I'm pulling up Monty Cook's form right now because I wanted to see because Monty Cook's form is fairly extensive. Um, Let me do something real quick. I'm just gonna see if I can bring it up into the actual thing real fast. Window cap. I don't care about the name. I just want to cap. There it is. Is it not showing it? It's not showing it. Rats. Let me try opening it up with.
It is being unkind.
Oh wait, I know. Maybe I can do it this way. Let me try one other thing. Instead of window cap, we will try to do delete. We will try and do just a screen cap. Display capture.
I use a snipping tool all the time.
Yeah. When we for cellular smoke is smoke says Monty's form should almost be required material. I agree that Monty's form or something similar absolutely should be especially if you're dealing with newer players. If it's people you've been playing with for the last 10 or 15 years, you probably know what their boundaries are, and you probably know how the ins and outs of those people. But for new games, absolutely. Over on UST, all of our newest cast members, because we have to get to know them, and everything, which they should actually be filling out soon. The two new cast members should actually be filling one out pretty soon. But yeah, absolutely, it's definitely something that should be passed around so that people know where those boundaries are.
Okay, so I
The thing
brought
is,
it
you
in. I brought it into the window, and I just basically just capped it. So if you can see here, it is a bit more extensive than the one you brought up because it covers like horror aspects, and then it breaks the horror aspects down, but bugs, blood, demons, eyeballs, gore, harm to animals, harm to children, rats, spiders, and then it has blanks for people to fill in stuff. And mental physical health has categories as well, relationships, and it actually, this is one thing I thought was kind of neat about it. It splits romance from sex.
Yeah.
So it has sex categories and it has romance categories. And then, social and cultural issues. And there is, and like under the mental and physical health, that's where they put things like torture or sexual assault and stuff like that. And then there's blanks on each category, and there are additional topics you can put in yourself. So it's a very, very extensive list. And this one happens that I have downloaded right now that I think this is the one I have pinned up in the Discord. This one actually is a form fillable one. So literally you can just fill it out and email it back to the GM. And that's all you need to do. So let me go and get rid of this now. So I highly recommend that everyone try and take a look at this. You have to go and it's kind of, it's a free download, but it looks like you have to pay for it at first, but it charges you $0 and doesn't require a credit card. So it's basically a completely free download. And I'm going to drop it in chat just in case anyone doesn't have the link, and I'll put it in the show notes after the show as well. It's a great form, and I'm going to put Michael's form in there as well, because once again, it's an Excel sheet, so you can actually add to it too. So everything there those are great ideas. And the only limitation to the Monty Cook form is it only has 3 levels of comfort. It has green, yellow, and red. So Um, it's like a hierarchy of sins. So
And then,
anyway,
well, depending on the games, I've added specific things like certain, and also certain, sometimes like certain things. If we're playing this, if we're playing Alien, player death has to be on the table.
no,
We have
yeah,
that we have that conversation ahead of time. Um, but yeah, kind of knowing like, oh yeah, what are things like there will be death and gore in an Alien game.
yep. Well,
Yeah.
someone will have a chest buster eventually.
Yep.
Mm!
Hey, it just happens. You know how it is.
Great thing about that is players are often like, look, I am here to kill or probably be killed by an alien, so I'm going to go into that hallway I should not be going into.
Right.
I just have this
Um,
driving need to have something burst out of me right now.
Call of Cthulhu is another one of those where it's like you walk into the game knowing you're probably not walking out. Yeah.
Yeah, and Call of Cthulhu, it is one of those things where Call of Cthulhu has its own problems, mainly due to Mr. Lovecraft himself. But it has its own problems, and it has, unfortunately, brought up a lot of the stuff that actually follows in with Michael's explanation of the way that RPG community is not progressive, because a lot of the fans of Call of Cthulhu are the same people who say, wow, separation of the author from the work type things, and
Right.
it's inherent in the work that Lovecraft created, that and especially when you look at his older novels, that there was a lot of misogyny, there was a lot of racism, overt racism, and we may have built something else off of it, but to try and ignore that and shoo it away, it
I,
is not good.
I think one of the
That's
problems
true.
that always aggravates me is, and again, as someone who produces theater, people have a very hard time looking at something that they enjoy and accepting that there's fault with it. Where it's like when people talk about the critical problems with not like Lovecraft's works, like I like the story Shadow over Innsmouth. I think it's really effective. Are there some really awful things about race mixing in there? Yes. It doesn't mean you
Absolutely.
can't enjoy the story, but like knowing that, yeah, he's got some really awful ideas that do work their way into this, and that is a part of what is happening here. But you
Hmm.
can still go, yeah, it's problematic, and I understand it. I like it. I mean, Lovecraft Country explicitly tackled that in the first episode. Like, by the way, I love these stories. By the way, here's something he wrote that's really bad. That's
Mm-hmm.
baldly on its face. Even someone who's going to try to pretend not to see you pointing out the problems still has to go, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
And going, we still enjoy it, even though this disparages us as human beings because we're black in
Yep.
Lovecraft Country with the writers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, you can enjoy it, but just admit the dude was racist.
Yep.
Yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say the dude was racist, and he used his writings as an agenda to promote his racism. So that's the worst part about it. So pretty much, we discussed a lot of the aspects of what table etiquette is. We really haven't put down like rules, and the reason for that is I think that the general rules of social niceties apply, which everyone was raised in one degree or another having some knowledge of them. And there is, so those are like normal, like respect your fellow players, respect the time that they put into coming here, and be courteous and everything like that. But the other kicker that rounds this out is that you cannot expect the other player. Yeah, don't be a dick. The Wheaton rule. But you cannot expect people who are coming to a store to play with strangers to all be at that same level of knowledge of the game, knowledge of the social niceties and everything like that. So, like we were saying before, the key thing about it is being courteous if something happens. I know it's shitty to have to be the person who's nice, but if you don't start nice, you could end up in a situation where you do actual more harm than the person who may be having the issues. Because if you're having the issue with what they're doing or what they're saying, you need to bring it out. Now, I'm not saying that if someone comes out and starts, just saying the N word at the table, that's pretty much absolutely unacceptable. I think the only thing that would ever be acceptable is if it's Tourette's.
Yeah.
And even then, people with Tourette's usually let you know as soon as you meet them.
Yep.
And that's a very rare type of Tourette's.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Ugh.
It's yeah.
So it's but that is a whole bunch of nope. But yeah, when you see situations that are that make someone uncomfortable and it's not being addressed, it is okay to address it, because this is the big reason why. If you address it and everyone at the table tells you, don't worry about it, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
You have that right there is golden permission to go, oh, well, you know what? I'm not feeling very well. I think I'll go home.
Yeah.
Because that's not a place you want to be.
No.
And if you're getting close to those touchier subjects, like an open conversation at the table really helps everyone feel more comfortable doing things and supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I have a lot of player versus player games, but it's player versus player character, but they're talking a lot about it when it's going on. So there's not like, hey, this thing's happening. Are you cool with this going on? And they're usually like, it's Smallville. So they're usually like, hit me with stress. But they talk about it when they do that.
So you're supposed to, I believe you're allowed to burn that table to the ground. No cellular smoke. You're not allowed to burn anything to the ground.
You said
not
something
even your own
incredibly
house
racist.
anymore.
Here's my token. Burn.
Right.
But also the other thing about that is, when you're looking at the situation like player versus player, put it this way, that is such a point of contention at gaming tables that Adventures League literally banned it.
Oh, D&D handles it so poorly. It shouldn't be a D&D thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the big thing about it is, when they any system, when you get into player versus player, number one, if you're getting into it with a new group, it can, because it becomes an interpersonal thing with roleplay that usually leads to it. It can become very, very heated. And it is okay to take a minute and say, is everyone okay? Mm-hmm. Even if they consented to the scene and they consented to these aspects in the game, if things are getting fired up, it is always okay to take a moment to say, are you okay? Now, this is one thing where digital tables excel at. Because at a digital table, the scene might be getting heated, and you can just throw a little bit of message out to both the players and say, everything good. And they can literally, like on our Skype call, they can just hit the thumbs up button. You know what I mean? Or they can put the sad face emoji if they don't feel good. You can come up with a structure. On tabletop games, you have a system called X Card, if you've ever heard of it. It's a very, very simple thing. You have a 9x5 card, and 9x5 card, and you just put a big fucking black X on it. Predominant, gigantic, obvious. If any scene comes up that you are not comfortable with, even if it's a scene you agreed to be part of, and you are not comfortable with it, and you don't want to try and break the scene, but maybe you need to step away or something like that, you just hold up the X card. And that lets everyone at the table know that you're having some difficulty with the scene. And you can either choose to, like, if you just want to just step away, you can either choose to step away from the table, or you can choose to have stop there and address the situation and try and make it try and take away that portion that's making you uncomfortable. And those aspects are some of the things that I have seen get some of the harshest pushback from older, more veteran players. Because one of the big things I hear from them about that, they always say almost the same thing. It's a role-playing game. It's part of what you signed up for by joining the community.
Those people suck.
Yeah, I know.
But I think, like...
Go ahead.
I was just saying, with any kind of intense scene, you should get used to checking in. Because I've had a player at a convention actually ask me, are you okay? I was doing a scene with someone that was intense, but I knew the guy I was doing it with. So we kind of felt free. She's like, is everything okay? I'm like, acting. Like, I'm a performer. This is fine. But at one time, we were doing something, a dread game, so we're all standing up the hell away from the table because
Jenga.
The table becomes terrifying in dread. And it was a game that I started off going, look, we're going to talk about what people want because your character, the ghosts your characters are going to come into is going to be the ghosts of your characters. Like, the more messed up we make them, the more willing we are to do that. One of them, she's like, her abusive boyfriend had been like a heroin addict, done all these awful things to her. We're doing part of a scene where I'm towering over, we're doing this thing, and then I literally stopped the part and go, you okay? She goes, yeah, this is great. And then we went straight back into it because, like, we were standing up at the thing. I was towering over her. I mean, I was like 5'9", she's like 5'2". There's a height difference and a strength difference, and like a weight difference there that it's like I could be intimidating to her without wanting to be, even without that scene being as intense as it was. So just stop for a moment. You cool? She's like, oh, this is great. Cool. Then we kept going. Mm-hmm. It didn't interrupt it. It didn't like throw us off. We were fine. We was still really enjoyed the scene and everything else that went on.
Absolutely. Now, and Cellular Smoke said, it's what my character would do is the biggest red flag ever. And you know, that's another thing. It comes back to respect to the table and communication. But number one, a lot of shitty veteran players and a lot of new, inexperienced players will try and use that as a rallying cry to be able to force their theme or their plot point or their idea into a story when they know it's making other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, if you have the rogue who steals from everyone in the party and goes, well, it's what my character would do. Well, why did you bring that fucking character to this ensemble game with other people you're supposed to be trying to have a good fucking time with?
Yeah.
Don't play the Kender.
Well, even Kender, if they get busted stealing, they just hand it back to you and they don't care. You know, because it's just an object. They picked it up because they liked it. And you weren't paying attention to it, so you obviously didn't like it. What's the rule for Kenders? Anything in the house more than a month is an heirloom. So anyway, but yeah, so you know, and like I said, there are tenets to table etiquette, whether it's online or in person, and those tenets are always respect and communication. You know, when you start out the game, when you're doing the session 0, communicate what's your my original edgelord. But what you communicate with them, you know, you make sure that you are being very, very apparent with what you're comfortable with, and be very, very honest with what you expect from the game. As a GM, be very, very open with what type of game you want to run, and communicate with the players and make sure that's the okay game style for this group. You know, and
absolutely
the consent checklists, whether it be, you know, whatever checklist you list, if you do a checklist, make sure that everyone knows that they can add whatever they want to the checklist, because everyone has different things that might make them not want to be part of a scene or not be comfortable with a scene. And it's okay to say, well, you know, I fucking hate snails. I can't stand them. They're terrifying. You know, it sounds like this little minutia thing, right? But if it's really something that's you feel strongly about, there's no reason not to mention it. because that little tiny minutia thing, the GM might accidentally bring it into the game because of just some stupid little story arc or some little plot hook or something like that, and then all of a sudden the GM's made you uncomfortable, and you're sitting there going, "Holy shit! I never told him about that, so now I can't say anything." Well, that's neither one of those. Well, making you uncomfortable unintentionally was true, but saying you cannot say anything about it just because you didn't mention it in the beginning is bullshit. You can say anything at any time.
Absolutely. And not only that, but it's important that, I mean, because let's be fair, we're human, we forget things. Things don't seem that important in the moment. But when they come up later, it is important to mention them because we are talking about a collaborative thing. This is a collaborative hobby, so communication is very important. And because if you're not communicating something that may be bothering you, it's going to keep happening. And everybody thinks it's fine because you never said anything.
And you're continuing not to say anything. So, and it's very hard. I know it's very, very hard for some people find it very hard to say something because, and it's once again, it's back to mental health issues. Some people have issues standing up for themselves. Some people have issues making that statement, putting forth that effort into making sure that their voice is heard. And so, as if you're a fellow player at the table and you're a friend of theirs, and someone just mentions that this has really been bugging them, but they didn't say anything about it in the beginning, and they're hesitant to say something now, it's not a betrayal of trust to try and make your friend feel more comfortable at the table by mentioning it to the GM.
Yeah.
The anonymous consent lists are good there, like if they don't have to put their name on it, because if it's something that they feel awkward, because some people are not going to want to talk about a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if they either do it on the Excel sheet or if it's one where they can just hand to the GM, like if everyone just hands it to you directly, but doesn't put their names on it, unless they have like this is not for me, then they can be like, I had a player who had to tell me, it's like, we're going to do a Persona game. He goes, yeah, suicide can't be on the table. When it was okay before, but something had happened. We didn't go into it. Be pretty clear what probably happened, but it was one of those things where he just said it. We're okay. We don't have to go into it. It's just off the table. He felt comfortable enough to just tell us, but if he didn't, he could have just sent me something or just actually added it to our sheet. And then we would go back over at the beginning of most sessions and just go, yeah, here are our lines and veils, blah, 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 as a reminder. So if something gets added, that can be an easy way to, oh, okay, someone put this thing down. Cool. That is now a line or a veil or whatever.
Yeah, Michael, you might be interested in the alternate show on Friday nights, because this show is only every other Friday. On the alternate show, we have a crew from Toronto whose their show is called The Lab Experiments in Gaming. Do you know Marcy on TikTok?
I don't think so, but that doesn't mean
I'll show a link to her stuff. She's amazing. But Marcy I saw Marcy and her friends trying to play RPGs on the live stream on TikTok. And I kind of reached out to them and said, if you guys want to try and do this, I would gladly produce the show for you. I'll build out the overlays. I'll do everything, because it was amazing. It was a wonderful freaking game. But they specialize in, like you do, lesser known RPGs. But they really take it a step further, and they specialize in games that prioritize representation, and they love GM-less ensemble storytelling games. So they've been playing a game called Fall of Magic. It's by Heart of the Deernicorn Studios, and the creator of Fall of Magic has been playing with them, Ross Cowman. And it's really, really cool, because when we start the call before the game, every game Ross does a check-in. And he, it's something that he's been putting out there, and it's something that he does religiously. And he starts a check-in before every single game, says how everyone's doing, make sure that everyone is feeling like going forward with the game, and making sure that, is there anything that happened that you want to tell us about that may be triggering for you tonight, because people have shitty days, like you were saying. Things happen. Someone might get into a car wreck earlier that day and, doesn't want to think about, the random acts of violence right now. So maybe we just chill with the violence tonight, and stuff like that. So Ross does a check on every game. And then after the game, Ross does a debrief, which is not just to go ahead and, take these people and talk to them about what happened in the game. It's also for them to, if anything happened in the game that made them uncomfortable, that he didn't feel comfortable with speaking of at that moment, they can bring it up during the debrief, or if there's and stuff like that. So, and it is an absolute something that I would love to be able to take and make sure I do from now on. It is an absolute wonderful thing to do as well, because it gives them that extra feeling of, we are all looking to take care of each other and make sure that this experience is enjoyable, pleasant, fun. And although there is trauma in role-playing games, especially when you get deep into story, it should be trauma that is not going to be triggering for you to make you feel worse. You're never supposed to leave a role-playing game feeling worse than when you went in.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I agree.
If you didn't agree, I'd be upset with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said it so succinctly. I was like, that's really the long and short of it at the end of the day.
Yep.
Like a game like Bluebeard's Bride is definitely not for everybody, and it's one where you go into like, if we're all okay with this, but at any moment, if we need to stop.
Mm-hmm. What's that one with the princess, Fire Something Princess? It's another one that's kind of got some severe adult themes to it. It's not a GM-less one, though.
Lamentation of the Fire
Lamentation of the Fire Princess, yeah.
Yeah, the biggest thing there is the people that make it are awful.
Oh, I didn't know.
It also, like, one of the people that I don't want to get sued as other people have been, so I'm just going to say it's easy to find some of the the allegations against some of the people there. There's also it is old school shock value. There's a lot of stuff in there that is like sexual assault and other stuff. We'll play this in the modules. Kind of like there's an edgelord vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when someone's like, "I love Lamentations of the Flame Princess," I tend to walk the other way. Some people, not everyone who likes it's awful, but it is.
I'm glad that we've brought that up. So now, if I ever hear the name, I can just be like, "No, thank you."
And that's an odd thing about RPGs, because things happen like even after an RPG is published. Let's take Dungeon World as an example. When that RPG was published, there wasn't any issues with the RPG or any of its creators. Since its publication, horrible things have happened. And one of the creators turned out to be, although, representing themselves as an advocate for the community and, an advocate for players, committed horrible sins against his own players on a live stream. And it, pretty much destroyed his career, as it should, because he did it with forthright knowledge that he was doing it.
Yeah.
And so it is, but that type of situation is really, unfortunately, has happened quite a bit in the RPG community. Where someone publishes something and then it came out later that that person was a closet neo-Nazi or or something like that.
Or a couple times, a Nazi,
just a Nazi. So it's kind of milkshake duck. What? Playing devil's advocate.
Oh, milkshake.
What about player death? I witness, albeit fair death, just bum out the player. That is something that for heavy story games, player death is more a plot beat or a major plot point than it is something that is going to come up unexpectedly. Okay?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean your characters are immortal and not in jeopardy. But there are plenty of easier ways to take a character out without outright killing them. Now, D&D has a mechanic does allow for the random deaths. and that can be traumatic. Like, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm saying there's been a couple games I know that do some interesting things with character death. I mean, Alien, you expect to die, but there's also other NPCs. The way you're running it, like you kind of come in okay with that. Fate of the Norns Ragnarok does a thing where when your character dies, you throw a funeral for that character, and there's a chance they go to Valhalla. And one of the things is you actually gain player level, like a player level, not a character level, which gives you new options on the next character. And eventually, you can actually bring one of your characters back from Valhalla if they made it. So it's actually one that kind of incentivizes, you know what? Let your characters die some. Like, be okay with it because you might see them again, and plus the nature of the world and the apocalypse. But yeah, if a lot of games, unless there's a specific reason, and a lot of the more narrative games, player death is a choice more than just oops, sorry, I rolled too much on this die.
Yeah, and that leads into the whole factor of more narrative games. The players are much more invested in the narrative, and their character is a device for that narrative. Oh, hang on. Foxstar said, we've lost a few players in my campaigns. One of them was cursed, and the player just wasn't feeling the character, so he was actually sacrificed, twisted into a new form, and put into the game as a new person, race, class, and it was traumatic, amazing, and epic. And that is a creative way to deal with someone who, wants to change characters. That's a really creative way to deal with that.
Reincarnate's an amazing spell.
Yeah, Mangus Noir wants to know what game that was again, Michael.
Yeah, Fate of the Norns Ragnarok.
There you go. Oh, you already put it in chat. Thank you.
Also, troop style games where you're playing multiple characters over the course of it help because if one character dies, it's not your only character.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's there's aspects to troop style games that I have enjoyed, but I've never been able to get that grip on playing more than one character in a scene. No, I've seen some of the more heavy story-based games that it's been, you can play more than one character in a scene, and that's kind of a little bit too much for me.
all the troop styles I've done, you have like a main character, and then like Ars Magica, you've got your mage, you have a companion to someone else's mage, then there's a ton of grogs. And this session, you're playing one of those characters.
Gotcha.
But not playing multiple.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
the other one would be a lot harder.
And there's like you said, there's tons and tons and tons of, well, not tons and tons of, there is a lot of troop style games that are getting really, really popular out there right now. It is becoming a more and more common factor, especially in the indie RPG scene, where there's troop style games are becoming a big thing, and that's because you can create scenes. And number one, it allows for a smaller player group because there's multiple PCs for each character, and you can create scenes. Like if there's 3 people playing, you can create scenes, and then you can select which characters you want in the scene. And the rules usually dictate only one player can play one character, but also because it's a troop ensemble game, they can exchange characters. So if I have 2 characters and everyone wants to see both those characters in one scene, well, someone else will just play the other character. So it works out to be that's, like I said, heavily narrative based. So anyway, I think we've kind of hit on all the major points. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up about table etiquette in general?
I think the most important thing is just be kind.
Make sure other people are awesome. Make sure other people are awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And remember that you have rights at the table. And if anything happens that makes you feel uncomfortable, you have a voice. But if you can't find your voice, you either have feet and you can leave. You owe no one any explanation. Or you may have friends at the table who can help. And in the end, hopefully, you'll have a GM who can help as well. And for GMs out there, be that advocate, please. You might not catch every time someone's uncomfortable, But when someone says they're uncomfortable, do not be that GM who takes it as a personal affront. It is them expressing themselves, and as we've said with respect 100 times tonight, you should respect the wishes of your players. If they tell you they're uncomfortable, they are comfortable enough with you to tell you that something is making them uncomfortable. That is, right there, is a massive and awesome thing to have someone do. Oh, hey, Nick. Yes, we're still doing this. In that case, I think we can go ahead and put this topic to bed for tonight. We are going to do a little bit of fancy dancing, and we're gonna. Does anyone have anyone they want to raid? Anyone in chat? Oh, the welcome in is up. Oh, we might raid them. Normally, what we try and do, huh?
They are up, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Normally, what we try and do is we try and raid. My cat is going to try and shut the stream down by walking on the keyboard. Normally, what we do is we try and raid a stream along the lines same as ours. Small streams and small creators. We do our best to promote small streams and small creators in order to give them the opportunity to grow the extent of who they can reach. And the big thing about it is, and the thing you usually have to remember is, all the creators, even if they're broadcasting on the same night as us, they have VOD, they have YouTube, they have all these kind of things that you can basically do to catch up on their stuff. And even watching their stuff on VOD helps them out. Okay? So if you guys want to give love to creators that we go and raid, do not feel guilty. Even if you skip our stream to watch theirs sometimes, or vice versa, because you can always go back and catch us on YouTube. You can catch them. Usually everyone has a YouTube that they use as an archive. And so you guys can always go back and catch up on ours on YouTube. You can catch on theirs on YouTube. But make sure if you can, you give them a follow when we go raid them, because that is the best way you can show a streamer's love, is to go through and give them a follow and make sure that they understand that you're there to support them, and let them know you came from Dinner and a Game, because it helps us know who's trying to help us out. So if you guys tell them that you're rating from Dinner and a Game, guarantee those streamers will mention us. They'll try and throw us a bone. They'll try and tell people to come, their own followers to come follow us, just because we were nice enough to actually give them a raid. It's a great community. Twitch itself might not be the best app or the best platform, but it's a great community, and especially the RPG side, because this cat is desperate for a dungeon, because they really do support each other. So before the cat shuts us down, let's go ahead and raid the welcome in. I want to say thank you to Chris and to Michael. Normally I'd put your links back up, but this cat is making it impossible. Wait.
Totally cool.
Oh, hang on a second. I'm in the wrong screen. So you can find Michael on Twitch, TikTok, and on Twitch too. I only have his TikTok links, but I do believe if they go to what's the other link to? Oh, never mind. If you go to this one, it actually mentions your main one, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Improv GM is also my Twitch. We are doing, with a couple different TikTok creators, Tech Noir this Sunday.
Excellent. And we don't stream on Sunday, so yay!
Whoa!
And you can find Chris at UST Show. And if you guys want to follow UST, they're a great stream. They're getting ready. When's your relaunch, Chris?
It should be in just a couple weeks.
Just a couple weeks. So they're getting ready to relaunch with a revamped cast. Are you starting the story over again, or are you going from a new beginning? I mean, going from where you left off, I should say.
We are kind of going from where we left off. Mm-hmm. So we are continuing the previous story.
Got it. All right.
So,
and what night do you actually broadcast?
We broadcast on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So
got it. There you go. And so we are going to go ahead and hit up the welcome in. Like I said, remember to say where you came from and tell them that you give them a follow if you can, and stick around and watch. They have some great players. They run a great show, and a lot of them are in costume, so it's really always cool. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Thank you guys so much. This cat really, really, really is going crazy, so I had to get out of here before it kills people, or just me. Thank you guys so much. At Dinner Game, we always save you a seat at the table. Remember, we always want you to be able to join that table. So if you do go out, still wear a mask when you can, especially if you're not vaccinated yet. The CDC just said that it is okay for vaccinated people to start gathering in large groups indoors. You know what that means? Fucking gaming's back on, ladies and gentlemen. This Saturday, my wife and I are going to the game store to play an in-person RPG for the first time in a year and a half. We're going to be doing it live. And don't forget that if you get vaccinated, if you can, please do, because you not only help yourself get back to normal life, but you help a lot of other people who might not be able to get vaccinated to stay safe. So thank you all very much. We're going to hit the raid button, and we will be gone in just a few seconds, but you will never be gone from our hearts. And thank you again, Michael. Thank you again, Chris. And we will see you back here for Dinner Conversations in 2 weeks. And clear.
Woo!